State of Maryland versus Ryan Grimes, the Honorable Judge Hecker presiding.
All right, good evening. Be seated, please. My colleagues, of course, on the bench with me this evening are Judge Richard Titus and Judge Brian DiLeonardo. Are there any preliminary matters from the state?
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Sumaya Rahman, and I'm here with my co-counsel Greg Myers and Daphne Whitmore. We wanted to start with a motion to constructively sequester all witnesses.
That motion is granted.
Thank you.
Any preliminary matters from the defense, or would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, my name is Kumawati Rufana. I'm here with my co-counsels, Nikki Zhang and Sophia Cabrera. The defense has a few stipulations that we would like to present as well.
All right, very well.
Permission to move freely about the well,
You may.
permission to approach the witness,
You may.
and permission to approach opposing counsel.
You may.
Thank you.
Okay, and that goes for the prosecution as well, so counsel need not ask permission to approach the witness or to approach opposing counsel. Okay. All right, we will begin with opening statements.
May it please the court, members of the jury, this case is about a freshman in college for whom wanting to fit in and have fun led to a very slippery slope. In March of 2021, Andy Benson, Carter Rodriguez, and Shannon Murray began a drug operation by selling Adderall around the campus at Catoctin College. After the start of the operation, you will hear that their business began to profit at an exponential rate, so much so that Miss Rodriguez even had to start to sell pills alongside Miss Benson. The three co-conspirators needed a fourth person to fill the empty spot on their team. Throughout this trial, you will come to learn that the defendant was the fourth co-conspirator who joined the drug operation in the fall of 2021. The defendant, Ryan Grimes, was an impressionable newfound college freshman looking at college activities as a way to meet people and make friends. As a result, the defendant joined a game club team of three seniors, who were Andy Benson, Carter Rodriguez, and Shannon Murray. However, these three seniors were selling drugs. After joining Humans vs. the Undead, you will hear that the defendant began to spend a considerable amount of time with the three members of the conspiracy, all while being fully aware that his friends were running a drug operation. Because the operation was growing so significantly, as a result, a significant portion of the three seniors' lives was spent maintaining and running it. However, at the same time, the eyewitnesses will support that the defendant had an active daily presence in the three seniors' lives. This created a wide open and easy pathway for the defendant to get involved in the conspiracy for themselves. The defendant was originally hesitant, but you will hear that the defendant then willingly reached out to Andy Benson to join the operation, where Andy Benson even went as far as to offer plausible deniability as a part of the deal. You will hear that the defendant then verbally responded yes, when Andy Benson wanted a clear answer as to whether or not the defendant was a part of a drug ring. Today, the prosecution will call three witnesses to the stand. First, we will call Andy Benson, a member of the operation, to detail their first and continued encounters with the defendant in relation to the crimes. From her, you will hear how the defendant came to be involved in the conspiracy through the descriptions of text messages and other interactions. Andy Benson will also elaborate on how the original operation came to fruition and thereafter functioned, including the defendant's involvement. Next, we will call Mason Palm to testify from a different perspective of a knowledgeable outsider looking in. She will share the marked difference she saw in the operation with the introduction of the defendant, as well as detail the suspicious activities and encounters she saw from the defendant. Lastly, we will call Detective Jordan Carmichael, who will explain their reasons for initially investigating suspicions regarding the defendant, as well as describe the incriminating connection between several items of forensic evidence obtained and search and seizure warrant to the defendant's involvement in the case. From her, you will hear examples of references as well as direct links between the defendant to the conspiracy, like how the defendant's fingerprints were found on the safe, and how the defendant's nickname Zombie was found in Shannon Murray's records of the drug operation. Although the defense may argue that the defendant continuously rejected involvement in the drug operation, the facts will show and the witnesses will support that the defendant was eventually a primary figure of involvement. On or between October 14, 2021 through December 6, 2021, the defendant in this case did conspire with Andy Benson, Carter Rodriguez, and/or Shannon Murray to distribute a controlled dangerous substance of Schedule II amphetamines against the peace, government, and dignity of the state of Maryland. At the conclusion of the case, and after you have heard all the evidence, we are confident that you will return a verdict of guilty, that the state has met its burden of proof. Thank you.
Counsel, thank you. Your opening statements from the defense.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. May it please the court. A clean record. Today, we have come to assert the innocence of a young college student by the name of Ryan Grimes. There's no doubt that by the end of this trial, after you have listened to the witnesses and seen all of the evidence, that you will find Ryan Grimes not guilty of conspiracy, and she will receive the clean record that she very much deserves. Ryan Grimes is a young college student at Catoctin College, and she struggled making friends at first, like any other college student. But she went to multiple information sessions and thought about joining multiple clubs before finally discovering Humans versus the Undead, a glorified game of tag. It was there that she met 3 seniors and befriended them. Andy Benson, along with their friends Carter Rodriguez and Shannon Murray, also loved playing Humans versus the Undead. They, however, were playing a different kind of game. They were running a drug ring with the illegal distribution of drugs, and when demand got overwhelming, they decided that they needed another individual to help with their distribution. So, on October 13th, 2021, one of the seniors approached Ryan and asked her to join their drug ring. Ryan naturally said no. As a college freshman, she just wanted to get through her college years without getting into any trouble. Not only was she uninvolved, she remained uninterested. On December 6, 2021, the 3 seniors were arrested by Detective Jordan Carmichael and his team. Detective Carmichael, who put out an offer to these seniors, the first of them to cooperate and testify for the state, will receive a clean record. Andy Benson jumped at this opportunity with no regard for the truth that Ryan Grimes remained uninvolved. Their statement has dramatically influenced the course of this case, and the state is providing an enormous incentive for Andy Benson to lie. Andy Benson wants a clean record. Ryan Grimes deserves one. Under Maryland law, conspiracy is defined as an agreement or mutual understanding for an individual to commit an illegal act. Today, the state has the burden to prove that Ryan Grimes first agreed to distribute the drugs and second went into this agreement with conscious intent of the crime. But members of the jury notice how the prosecution's story is full of holes, weak circumstantial evidence, and testimony from a witness who prioritizes themselves over honesty. Notice how their entire case is based upon improper conduct and bias. Notice how they will not only call Andy Benson to the stand, but also Mason Huang, another individual who participated in the drug ring but will not be punished for their actions. Finally, notice how the state will fail to meet their burden because our evidence will prove that Ryan Grimes was adamantly uninterested and uninvolved the entire time. Members of the jury, we will call 3 witnesses to the stand today. First, Ms. Carter Rodriguez, a friend of Ms. Grimes's, who will testify to the truth because she has no reason to lie. And second, we will call our expert witness, Ms. Taylor Casey, an experienced detective who will testify to the improper conduct that occurred in this case prior to this trial. She will provide you with 3 conclusions. First, that the police did not have probable cause when originally arresting Ms. Ryan Grimes, but she still agreed to an interview because she has nothing to hide. Second, there is insufficient evidence to prove that Ryan Grimes was involved in narcotics trafficking. And third, Ryan Grimes was just a college freshman who was adjusting and adapting to college campus life. And finally, we will call our defendant, Ms. Ryan Grimes, who would testify that her friendship with the seniors never went past what normal college friends would do. Members of the jury, I ask that you acknowledge that your verdict should be based on the presumption of innocence. Ms. Grimes is innocent until proven guilty, and she must be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Think of beyond a reasonable doubt as a game of tug of war, with prosecution on one side and defense on the other. If the evidence pulls the knot even a little bit towards defense, you must find Ryan Grimes not guilty of conspiracy. But members of the jury, I can assure you that by the end of this trial, that knot will be nowhere near the prosecution. The evidence that the state does have is motivated by a clean record that Andy Benson wants, a clean record that Ryan Grimes deserves. Find the verdict that illuminates the truth. Thank you.
Counsel, thank you. State's first witness, please.
At this time, the state would like to call Ms. Andy Benson to the stand.
All right, Andy Benson.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the offense of perjury? I do.
Good evening, Ms. Benson. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Hello, my name is Annie Benson. I am 21 years old. I'm a former college student of Chesapeake, Maryland.
Now, do you know Shannon Murray and Carter Rodriguez?
Yes, I'm very familiar with them both.
What is your relationship with them?
Shannon and Carter, I met them during my freshman year of college through the game Humans versus the Undead, and we became really good friends, and we stayed really good friends throughout my entire college career. We even ended up rooming together at some point.
Okay. Do you know Miss Ryan Grimes?
Yes, she is the defendant of this case.
Can you please point to Miss Ryan Grimes?
Over there.
At this time, let the record show that the state has identified the defendant, Ryan Grimes.
I very well.
Could you tell us about your relationship with Miss Grimes?
I recall meeting Miss Grimes during her freshman year of college when they first joined our gaming group. And immediately they were welcomed pretty quickly due to their really good personality, and they had a great sense of humor.
Now, I would like to redirect your attention to March of 2021. What, if anything, significant happened during that time?
Well, Carter picked up Adderall in order to focus more on his her assignments, and shortly after, she approached us, our friend group, about possibly selling the Adderall to students on campus.
Miss Benson, what did you do?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I was immediately hesitant about the idea at first. I just didn't want to. I'm a young college student. I didn't really want to be involved in any criminal activity. But after Carter's thorough explanation about how the operation would run, I eventually came around.
And how did you and your friends execute this idea?
Basically, I was in charge of talking to people, basically just networking, and Carter kept inventory of all the pills and things we would sell, and then Shannon had a little black book of our profit logs.
Okay. Now, I would like to redirect your attention to fall of 2021. What, if anything, significant was happening to your drug operation?
Balancing a business and school started to get a little bit overwhelming for us, so Carter had the idea that we should bring in Miss Grimes.
And why did you want to involve Miss Grimes?
I didn't want to involve Miss Grimes because she's very young and she's fairly new to our friend group, and I was just immediately hesitant about the idea. But Carter decided to. Carter explained to us that it would be less suspicious if Ryan was seen with underclassmen in regards to our operation.
So how did you or your friends approach Miss Grimes?
Carter approached Miss Grimes.
Can you tell us a little bit more, based on your knowledge, how Carter approached Miss Grimes?
Based on what I was told, Carter pulled Ryan aside and talked to her about our operation, and from my knowledge of what I was told, Grimes immediately declined.
Court's indulgence. I'm approaching opposing counsel with Exhibit 7. I'm approaching the witness with Exhibit 7. Miss Benson, could you tell us what this is?
This is the conversation between me and Ryan about his possible involvement in our operation.
Okay, is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, we would...
Objection, lack of foundation.
Well, let's let the prosecution finish its statement first.
At this time, we would like to publish Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Okay, your objection is lack of foundation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Did not say the time of the text message.
Want to respond to that?
Yes, Your Honor.
It looks like the council's going to try to lay a little more of a foundation.
Ms. Benson, could you tell us the time and date of the text messages?
10:33 a.m.
Thank you. At this time, we would like to admit Exhibit 7 into evidence.
No objections.
All right, admitted.
Now, Ms. Benson, can you tell us what this conversation was about?
As I said before, this is a conversation between me and Ryan about her possible involvement in our operation. Basically, this is Ryan asking if we can talk, and me replying, sure, come by later.
And what did you talk about that night?
Ryan had a change of heart in regards to joining our operation.
Objection, speculation.
Well, was not responsive, so I'll sustain the objection. The question asked what you talked about. Okay. You want to repeat the question?
Yeah, so could you tell us a little bit about what your conversation and interaction with Ms. Grimes was about that night?
My conversation with Ryan was ultimately just about our operation, and she asked me questions about how we were going to execute our operation. And like I said, they had a change of heart about. They initially said no, but they had a change of heart about joining our operation.
So did Ms. Grimes officially agree to be a part of your operation?
Yes, Ms. Grimes verbally and physically agreed, and I quote, when I explained to her about the implications of our operation, Ryan replied with, agreed to join, and replied, we'll start talking to people tomorrow.
Okay. Now, could you tell us a little bit more about what happened after Ms. Grimes made that statement?
Like following when they joined our operation.
Yes.
Following them joining our operation, our sales started increasing, and we were introduced to a whole new different consumer base.
Okay, and based on your knowledge and what you have witnessed, how did Ms. Grimes engage with you and your friends?
We mostly engaged like normal, except for the fact that Ryan would come like by the apartment late at night in order to avoid suspicion. But for the most part, it was pretty normal.
Now, I would like to shift your attention to after Thanksgiving break. What, if anything, significant was happening during that time?
So following Thanksgiving break, our sales began to drop around like 50%, and that was also around the time that Ryan got sick. It was pretty hectic time. It was also for our business, it was also pretty interesting. It was weird that it was around finals, so it was weird that our sales weren't increasing because that should have been a time where our sales should have been at its peak.
And what happened after that week?
Shortly after that, on December 6th, at around 3 p.m., I got arrested.
And what happened after your arrest?
Following my arrest, I had a conversation with Detective Carmichael, and he proposed to me. She proposed to me a PBJ, and I made a mistake, and I feel like I'm young, and I don't want this one mistake define me for the rest of my life. So I decided to tell her everything she needed to know and speak my truth. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Benson. At this time, we have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Hello, Ms. Benson.
Hello.
You are here on behalf of your plea agreement with the state, correct?
That is correct.
The plea agreement that allows you to have a clean record after testifying for the state.
True.
And it didn't even bother you to sell the Adderall, correct?
I did state that, yes.
You just didn't want to deal with the consequences of your actions, right?
I believe I believe that, me speaking to you about the operation was me taking responsibility for my actions, but
This is a yes or no question. And this is why you were cooperating with the state, right?
that is correct.
And you have every intention of making sure the state believes you, right?
Correct.
Now I would like to talk about your involvement in the drug ring. Your job was to obtain Adderall through a prescription, correct?
For a prescription ordered to me through Mason, but yes, correct.
And you obtained this prescription through lying, right?
Correct.
You even went as far as to ship the drugs to your parents' house, right?
That is true.
You were also responsible for finding people to sell to, right?
Yes, that was my role.
All right. You also reached out to Mason Wong to ask how to obtain Adderall through the dark web, right?
That is correct.
All right, moving on. Your purpose for Ryan joining the drug ring was because she had access to underclassmen, right?
I was advised by.
Just a reminder, this is a yes or no question.
May I speak, please?
Well, answer the question first, and then if your counsel needs you to clarify something, they can do that. Or if the state needs you to clarify something.
Yes.
All right. So now, so you were a freshman at Conducting College, right?
I was one of this.
So you know the common areas where freshmen hang out and potentially would hang out as friends and stuff, as groups.
Yes, as do other college students.
So you would have access to freshmen, correct?
Yeah, they were on campus, so I could talk to anyone.
Right. So hypothetically, you would have access to freshmen, right?
Yes.
All right. Moving on. So Ryan allegedly joined before Ryan allegedly joined the drug ring, someone bought drugs from you, correct?
That's correct.
And this person was an underclassman, right?
I assume so.
And you never told, and you never told Ryan about where you, Shannon, and Carter got the drugs, right?
That's correct. We did not want to involve Ryan more than he wanted to. She wanted to be involved.
All right. Drawing your attention to Exhibit 7, which has already been admitted into evidence. Indulgence, please.
Sure.
Great. Your Honor, may I publish Exhibit 7 to,
Sure, it's in, you may do that.
This was a conversation between you and Miss Grimes, correct?
Correct.
And Ryan initiated this conversation with you on October 18th, 2021, correct?
Correct.
And this conversation was just between you and Miss Grimes, right?
Yes.
And there was no recording of this conversation?
Other than what's on the screen, but.
So, Miss Benson, this conversation is purely your word against Miss Grimes' words, right?
Yeah.
Now I'd like to talk about your affidavit and your conversation with Detective Carmichael, you wrote an affidavit for this case, correct?
Correct.
And you swore to tell the truth in your affidavit under the pains and penalties of perjury, correct?
Correct.
And during this conversation with Detective Carmichael, this was when you signed the plea deal, correct?
Correct.
And you mentioned Ryan in this, right?
Yes, I did.
And as a part of your plea agreement, the state determines the truth, don't they?
They did.
All right. You agreed to testify because your plea agreement, correct?
Correct. And also I wanted to tell you my
All right. And if you don't testify to a state satisfaction, you will go to prison, won't you?
That is correct.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Not at this moment.
All right, the witness is excused. State's next witness, please.
The state would call Mason Hong to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Please introduce yourself to the court.
I'm Mason Huang. I'm 21 years old and I'm a senior at Compton College. I'm currently double majoring in computer science and engineering.
Can you identify the defendant in court today?
Yes, I can. She's in the gray suit jacket.
What, if any, relationship do you have with the defendant?
I don't really know her that well, but we went to the same college.
Ms. Huang, do you know Carter Rodriguez?
Yes, I do. We sat next to each other in class.
What, if any, relationship do you have with them?
I didn't really take note of him until I saw him in the library one day, and he pulled out a pill bottle and the pills looked like Adderall. So I went up to him, and that's kind of how it started.
What started?
Well, I wanted to buy some from him, but then he said no. But then later he came up to me and said he was interested. So that's like when the operation started.
Ms. Huang, do you know Andy Benson?
Yes, I do.
What, if any, relationship do you have with them?
Carter actually introduced me to Andy and Shannon.
Ms. Huang, what, if anything, changed about your relationship with Andy Benson, Carter Rodriguez, and Shannon Murray when you returned for your junior year?
I don't know. It just kind of stopped, so I started to watch them.
What, if anything, did you notice had changed about the operation?
I noticed that I saw a new person hanging around them, which I would soon figure out was Ryan Grimes.
Did you have any interactions with the defendant?
Yeah, about 3.
What happened in the first interaction?
In the first interaction, it was either September 8th or 9th, and it was during the fall 2021 semester, and we were in the lunch line together.
Let's talk some more about your observations. What, if anything, did you notice about the relationship between the defendant and the 3 co-conspirators?
I noticed that Ryan would always be by himself or with Carter and Andy, and she would always go to their house at really strange hours, and she'd always be carrying things.
What was the defendant carrying?
Small boxes, envelopes, tote bags.
What, if anything, did you notice about the defendant's behavior?
I noticed that she would go to their house at 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. and stay for 30 to 45 minutes.
What, if anything, else did you notice?
I noticed that I started to see Carter and Andy around campus a lot more, and Ryan was talking to way more people.
What were they doing?
Mainly talking to freshmen. I only know this because I'm a TA for the freshman section of the Introduction to Computer Sciences.
Based on your observations, what, if anything, did you notice once the defendant began to hang out with Carter and Andy?
I noticed that she started to go to their house more, and I didn't see anyone else go to their house half as much as Ryan did.
How often did these visits take place?
Almost every night, and I only never saw them occur at night.
Ms. Huang, what, if any, interactions did you have with the members of the conspiracy in the month of November?
I saw Ryan, so I asked her if it was just the 3 of them still, but she said no, that there's a 4th person who helps and gets the younger crowd.
Let's move on.
Objection. The statement that the witness has made was incorrect and is not in the affidavit.
Well, that's a point you can make on cross-examination.
Let's move on to the events in December. What, if anything, did you do with the observations you had gathered?
I saw Ryan sitting alone on a bench, so I was about to go up to him, but someone else did first. So I got on my phone and acted like I wasn't listening, but really I was.
What, if anything, did you notice?
I noticed that Ryan kept on talking about how something new was on the way, but this time it wouldn't help them study.
Now I would like to direct your attention to 3 p.m. on December 6th. What, if anything, happened?
That's the day Andy, Shannon, and Carter got arrested.
What, if anything, else happened pertaining to the situation after the arrest?
The next week, the week of early December, Ryan came to my house, and it looked like she had been crying.
What, if anything, happened in your interaction with the defendant?
She asked me if I knew what happened to her friends, and I nodded and said yes. And then she raised her voice and said she was so shocked to learn about everything we're doing. And then she lowers it and says, "Do you understand what I mean?"
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examine.
Well, Ms. Hahn, I'd like to talk about your conversation with Carter, not Ryan. You asked Carter who was involved in the drug ring, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you assumed that it was Ryan Grimes?
Yes, I did.
You even asked Ryan if she could sell you drugs?
Yes, I did go up to Ryan.
And
yes.
she told you to leave her alone, right?
Yes, she did.
You acknowledge that you were not involved in this drug ring, is that correct?
Yeah, I did notice that.
But I'd like to talk about your involvement. You were in communication with the individuals in the drug ring, right?
Yes, I was.
And you even had Andy Benson's phone number to give to other students, correct?
Yes, Andy did give it to me.
Word ended up spreading to a lot of people you know, not just your friends, right?
Yes, Andy told me to tell people that I knew.
You don't have a prescription for Adderall, do you?
No, I don't.
And yet you still bought Adderall from Andy?
Yes, I did.
You even got a 50% discount.
Yes, I got that because I was helping out.
Yes, so you got a 50% discount from helping Andy out, right?
Yes, I did.
After you asked Carter to sell you Adderall, she reached back out to you, correct?
Yes, she did.
And she occasionally paid you money throughout your sophomore year?
Yeah, she would hand me some money here and there.
So when you came back your junior year, you expected to continue getting money from the drug ring, isn't that right?
Yeah, I expected us to continue where we left off.
So you expected to continue getting money from the drug ring, right?
Yes, I did expect to get paid. So.
When you didn't receive money your junior year, you stopped telling your friends to get pills from Andy, isn't that right?
Yes, I believe so.
And you acknowledge that you played a small part in the operation when it started, correct?
Yes, I do acknowledge that key fact.
You never saw Ryan handle or sell drugs at all, correct?
No, I didn't.
You never even heard Ryan mention Adderall?
No, I haven't heard Ryan.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, the witness is excused. State's next witness, please.
The state calls Detective Carmichael to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pain and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Good evening, Detective Carmichael.
Good evening.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Detective Jordan Carmichael, and I'm a detective with the CCPG.
So, how long have you been a detective with the CCPD?
I joined as an officer in 2014, and then in 2016 I was promoted to detective, and has worked as a detective ever since.
So, what is your experience with drug-related investigations?
I have done over 500 drug-related investigations.
And can you explain to the jury your history with narcotics search warrants?
I have obtained and assisted with over 100 narcotic search warrants and arrests.
Can you describe your training to become a detective?
Yes, this is a long list, so bear with me. I have done 40 hours in the identification of controlled dangerous substances. I've done 8 hours on search warrants. I have done 16 hours in criminal street gang strategic operations, 8 hours of narcotic and undercover investigations. I've done 24 hours of interviews and interrogations. I have done 8 hours on drug ID and complete traffic stops, 8 hours on pharmaceutical investigations, 16 hours on criminal street gang strategic operations. I have done a 2-hour webinar on fentanyl safety for law enforcement, and then an 8-hour course on CMOA and fentanyl dangers.
Your Honor, at this time, Detective Carmichael has already been stipulated as an expert in narcotics investigation and identification of narcotics according to stipulation number 12.
Very well, the court will recognize Detective Carmichael as an expert based on the stipulation.
So, Detective Carmichael, what drew your attention to the drug ring at Stockton College?
I was contacted by an anonymous student at Stockton College. This was a student that was sold Adderall allegedly by Ms. Benson.
And how did you proceed with the investigation?
My team immediately identified Ms. Benson, and then and the apartment that she lives in. I set up surveillance right outside of her apartment, apartment 1A of the Blue Ridge apartment complex. With Ms. Benson, I also identified Shannon Murray and Carter Rodriguez, two individuals that also lived there, and I conducted surveillance sessions for the next 2.5 months.
So what, if any, evidence did you collect against the three seniors?
I saw Ms. Benson go behind the academic building with another student. I saw them engage in a very short conversation. The student handed Ms. Benson a package, which I do not know the contents of, and Ms. Benson handed another package back. Those two broke off without another word. So I believe in my experience as a drug deal, I witnessed around 10 more of these interactions from Ms. Benson and Ms. Rodriguez.
So that brings me to my next question. I'm going to direct your attention onto the morning of December 6th. What, if anything, occurred that morning?
On December 6th, I applied and was granted a search warrant. I knocked on the apartment door at around 3-ish p.m. I immediately arrested the individuals and started taking measures to secure the apartment. I then collected all the evidence and submitted it to the lab.
And what, if any, evidence was submitted to the lab?
It was a small black notebook, a plastic bag on the dining room table that contained 5 white round pills. It was 6 rolls of cash, and then there was a safe. Located inside the safe was another 4 rolls of cash. It was a plastic baggie containing 253 white round pills and a bag full of white powdery substance, and a small electric scale was also found in there.
Your Honor, at this time I'm approaching the opposing counsel with what's been marked as Exhibit 1, Exhibits 2A through 2D, and Exhibits 12A through 12D. So, Detective Carmichael, I'm first going to ask you about Exhibit 1.
Okay.
Can you identify it?
Yes, I can.
What is it?
It is a copy of the lab results of the evidence that's submitted to the lab.
And is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, it is.
Now drawing your attention onto Exhibit 2.
Okay.
Can you identify it?
Yes.
What is it?
They are, Exhibit 2A through 2D are pictures that I took of the apartment.
And is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, yes it is.
Finally, Exhibit 12. Can you identify it?
Yes.
What is it?
It is pictures I took of the cover and the contents of the black notebook.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time I move Exhibits 12, 2, and 1 into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, the state would like to object to Exhibit 12, which is Shannon Murray's notebook.
Okay, on what basis?
Hearsay. Shannon Murray is not here in order to be able to testify on why exactly or what exactly the contents of the notebook are. And Detective Carmichael was not the one who wrote this information, so she is unable to testify to specifically the notebook.
May I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, according to stipulation number 5, Rule 801-2DE states that all conspirators are involved are an exception to hearsay, whether it be their statements or evidence.
Is this a co-conspirator who allegedly wrote these notes?
Yes, one of the conspirators, Shannon Murray, wrote these notes.
We would like to object on the basis of specifically speculation in terms of the information and why Shannon Murray specifically wrote that information.
All right, the objection is overruled.
Court's indulgence. Permission to approach the objector.
You may.
So, Detective Carmichael, what, if anything, is this image representing?
Again, it is representing the lab report and the evidence that was got back, which proves that the white round pills were indeed Adderall and the white powdery substance found in the safe was cocaine.
Let the court reflect that all the drugs shown will be proof of the following alleged drugs shown in the following pieces of evidence.
All right, well, the document speaks for itself.
So, Detective Carmichael, I'm first going to show you Exhibit 2C. What, if anything, is this image showing?
That is the picture of the common area with the bag of white pills that I found, also the black notebook on it.
Okay, moving on to Exhibit 2D. What, if anything, is being shown here?
That is again a picture of the common room that I took, but it shows the location of the safe in the middle right corner.
And how about 2A? What is being shown here?
That is a closer up image of where the safe is shown. It shows the location and the stuff around it.
And finally, 2B. What is being shown here for this exhibit?
That is the safe and the contents of the safe that I explained that was submitted to the lab.
Court's indulgence. So, can you explain what is being represented in image Exhibit 12A?
That is the cover of the black book that Miss Murray kept.
So, who, if anything, is shown on this page of Exhibit 12B?
It shows that Carter, Shannon, and Andy are listed on the page.
How many people are shown on Exhibit 12C?
3. Again, Carter, Shannon, and Andy.
Thank you. Exhibit 12D.
Again, 3 people, Carter, Andy, and Shannon.
And finally, Exhibit 12E. What is being shown here?
That shows Andy, Carter, and it also says zombie at the bottom.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to direct your attention away from the evidence and onto the defendant. Can you point out the defendant for the jury?
Yes, it is the woman in the gray blazer.
Thank you. Who, if anyone, did you originally suspect was involved in the drug ring?
I originally suspected and was investigating Miss Murray with Miss Rodriguez and Miss Benson.
And so, what instance made you first notice the defendant?
I noticed Miss Grimes hanging out with the 3 seniors, the 3 suspects, a lot, but at the time I did not collect any evidence against Mrs. Grimes, so therefore I did not view any evidence against Miss Grimes.
So how often did you see the defendant enter her friend's home?
It was 5 times the week of November 8th.
And what hours was this typically?
It was typically between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m.
Okay, so at what instance made you start investigating the defendant?
So I was interviewing with Miss Benson, who was operating with the state on a PBJ, or probation before judgment sentencing. She expressed her concern that Miss Grimes was not listed on the potential suspects, and her concern alone allowed me to start investigating Miss Grimes.
And how did you proceed with the investigation after?
I gathered the evidence that I originally collected of the 3 seniors, and I reviewed that evidence in relation to Miss Grimes.
So, I want to direct your attention onto the interview. What problems did the defendant pose during her interview?
At the end of it, she started off great. She was answering my questions just fine, very likable person, but at the end, she became very unresponsive and wasn't answering my questions.
Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, she would just stop talking when I asked her specific questions, and it would become very broad, and she appeared to get very angry.
And so, how did the interview end?
She decided to remain silent after I pointed out that her fingerprints were found in the safe that she claimed to not touch.
So how did you proceed with the investigation following this interview?
I applied for a arrest warrant, which I was granted by the judge and by my supervisor, and I arrested Miss Grimes.
So what, if any, incriminating evidence did you collect against the defendant?
I found a lot of fingerprints of Miss Grimes. I found her thumbprints located on the black book. I found 2 of her fingerprints found on the safe. And then I found her fingerprint on a roll of cash. And I also found the presence of the word zombie in the black book of the transactions of the drug ring. I found that concerning as well.
And how did you proceed with the investigation?
Like I said, I arrested Miss Grimes. I was approved by both my supervisor and the judge. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross examine.
Detective Carmichael, you've undergone extensive training in your field, yes?
Yes, I have undergone so many training.
And you've worked on 500 drug investigations and arrests.
Yes, around that.
Yet your opinion of this case changed with Mr. Benson's cooperation, right?
Mrs. Benson's concern allowed me to start. Mrs. Benson's concern allowed me to start investigating the evidence. Ms. Benson did not create the evidence. She put it in the
But
right direction.
your opinion of the case still changed with Ms. Benson's cooperation.
Yes, it did.
And you went undercover in plain clothes in order to get information about Miss Grimes, correct?
Correct. That is how surveillance is done.
And you didn't attempt to interview students at Catoctin College you didn't attempt to interview students at Catoctin College at all until after Miss Grimes' arrest, correct?
Yes, until after the arrest.
During your investigation, you didn't dust the entire apartment for fingerprints, correct?
Correct.
And this was because evidence wouldn't be useful at a place where suspects lived, correct?
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
And this was because evidence wouldn't be useful in a place where suspects lived and touched things on a daily basis, correct?
Objection, speculation.
May I be heard?
Yes.
The witness has already testified has already written in her affidavit that an explanation for fingerprints in common areas.
Well, the question in and of itself doesn't call for speculation, so I'll overrule the objection.
Could you please rephrase your question? I'm having trouble understanding it.
Yes. You stated in your affidavit that the evidence or fingerprints in common areas would not be useful because suspects would live and frequent these areas, correct?
I stated that about DNA. I looked for forensic evidence for incriminating objects. Yes.
I'm specifically about the fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
You would not use fingerprints in common areas, correct?
Correct. Sorry, I'm still having trouble, but we can move on.
I'm approaching opposing counsel with what has been pre-admitted as Exhibit 2A. Permission to publish to the jury.
It's already been admitted, correct? Yes.
This is the state's Exhibit 2A, which depicts a safe on top of a cart and other kitchen appliances. What exactly is about this safe?
It is a microwave. I think that's an air fryer, and the other two things are too blurry. I can't see that.
Okay. And college students would share a kitchen space, correct?
Yes, I would assume so.
You spent roughly 2 months investigating the original 3 suspects, correct?
Yes, roughly.
And you spent 2 weeks both investigating and filing an arrest warrant for Miss Grimes, correct?
Because the evidence was already collected. So, yes.
But you did not focus on Miss Grimes until those 2 weeks, correct?
No, but then it was already easy because all the evidence that
Detective
was
Carmichael, I'm asking yes or no question. You did not focus your investigation on Miss Grimes until these 2 weeks, correct?
No, I started. Could you repeat your question? Maybe
Yes.
it's wrong by accident.
You spent 2 weeks investigating and filing an arrest warrant for Miss Grimes, correct?
Yes, I did spend 2 weeks.
Your supervisor was initially hesitant about your arrest warrant for Miss Grimes, correct?
My supervisor was yes, but I had 2 other detectives that were on my side. But yes,
But your
my supervisor, yes.
But your supervisor wasn't hesitant about the original 3 suspects, correct?
No, it was not.
Mr. Benson was the first suspect to agree to the probation before judgment deal, correct?
Yes, which was offered to all 3 of the suspects.
And part of this deal required him to testify against all other suspects in this case, correct?
Yes, all co-conspirators.
You reviewed Annie Benson's affidavit, right?
Correct, I did.
So you're aware of who Mason Huang is, correct?
Yes,
So you know that Mr. Huang helped Miss Benson to buy drugs off the dark web, correct?
I do.
But Mason Huang was never considered a suspect, correct?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. Cross.
Could you repeat your question?
But Mason Huang was never considered a suspect, correct?
No, currently our focus is on the 3 suspects plus Ms. Grimes.
But
she was never originally considered such.
Like I said, no, she was not.
And Andy Benson lied in his affidavit, correct?
I don't know specifically what she's thought. I don't know exactly what's going on in her mind, so I don't necessarily know if she was lying or not. I know she twisted words a little bit, and she said things that I don't think I said.
You prepared an affidavit for today's trial, correct?
Correct.
May the record reflect that I will approach opposing counsel with what has been marked as detective chronicles. Can you please read for the court this sentence here?
I did not ask who is Ryan. Is that it? Sorry.
from like 29.
Okay. On December 21st, I interviewed Andy Benson at police headquarters. Benson told me everything in Benson's affidavit, with a few exceptions. Like I said, it's all relative. So she could have misheard something.
However, in your affidavit, you state that you clearly did not, or Andy Benson did not, you did not ask Andy Benson who is Ryan, correct?
Yes, I did not ask that.
And you signed the last page of your affidavit, correct?
Correct, I did.
And Andy Benson did the same?
I would assume so, yes.
And you swore to tell the truth in this affidavit as well?
Correct.
And Andy Benson was required to do the same, correct?
Correct.
And the state has required her to tell the truth, right?
Correct.
So then, Detective Chronicle, Andy Benson cooperated to your satisfaction, right?
What do you define as satisfaction?
Your his satisfaction of cooperating in this case, correct?
Do I feel that she,
Detective Chronicle, I'm asking a yes or no question here.
well, your yes or no question is kind of confusing.
Objection argumentative.
Overruled. You need the question repeated?
Yes.
Or Andy Benson cooperated to your satisfaction, correct?
Correct. I would say that he successfully testified against all co-conspirators. Correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any regrets?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the witness is excused.
At this time, to stay addressed.
Very well. All right, defense first witness, please.
Please raise your right arm. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? I do.
Hello. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Carter Rodriguez, and I'm 21 years old.
What is your most recent level of education?
I was a senior at Catoctin College.
How was your time at Catoctin College?
I wasn't really thrilled about attending Catoctin originally, but once I settled in and joined Humans vs. the Undead Club, I started to have a good time there.
Humans vs. the Undead Club, that sounds really interesting. Could you please elaborate more?
Yeah, it's basically like a glorified game of tag where the undead tries to find the other groups, and I was on a team with Andy Benson, Shannon Murray, and Lather Ryan.
What was the friendship like with Andy, Shannon, and Ryan?
Yeah, I met Andy and Shannon my freshman year when we all met during Humans vs. the Undead Club, and we instantly clicked, and I later realized that we lived in the same building. So our friendship grew from there, so much so that we ended up moving in together our junior year. And I met Ryan when she was asked to join our team this year, and she really just clicked with our whole group.
What sort of things did you do together as a friend group?
We would participate in Humans vs. the Undead, and often we would all go over to our apartment and we would watch movies, just talk, hang out, order food, stuff like that.
Drawing your attention to what is pre-marked Exhibit 2A, which is already being published to the jury, could you please explain or describe how you hypothetically would grab the plates on the bottom shelf?
Yeah, so the bottom shelf is very low to the ground, and I'm pretty tall, so I would need to bend down, stabilize myself by putting my hand directly above that bottom shelf, which happens to be the safe, to bend down and pick up the stuff on the bottom.
Alright, so moving on. Given your close friendship with Andy Shannon, and Ryan, were you close with anybody else on campus?
Other than a few people from Human Resources Undead, it was primarily Andy, Shannon, and Ryan.
Was there anything challenging about your school life at Kentucky?
I did both socially I could talk to him, but I did have a hard time in some of my classes. I developed some bad study habits and had a hard time focusing, so I used Adderall to alleviate my symptoms.
How did you come to possess this Adderall?
It was prescribed to me legitimately by my doctor in March of 2021.
Were there any incidents regarding this Adderall?
Yeah, one day I was in the library when I was approached by Mason Huang when he asked me if I would sell him Adderall, which I immediately denied because it's a weird request. Obviously, I really denied him, and then I ended up telling Andy and Shannon about this interaction because it was so weird to me. And Andy seemed instantly intrigued by potentially selling Adderall and was very persistent about this topic.
How was Andy persistent?
I was constantly badgered by Andy for a great period of time, so much so that he even said that I would only have to obtain the Adderall. That's all I would have to do, and it just got so bad, and it really just wouldn't stop to the point where I gave in and ended up giving him the name of my doctor.
Did he ever go to this said doctor?
Due to Andy's request, Shannon ended up going to the doctor that I told him, and we had a steady amount of pills coming in from that doctor as of April of 2021.
Did anything unfortunate happen, if anything, happen with these pills?
Yeah, the summer of 2021, they started selling the pills, and I unfortunately regretfully assisted them in doing so.
Right, moving on to Miss Ryan Grimes. How did you come to meet her?
I met her when she was asked to join my Human Resources Undead group this year.
What was she like?
She was shy at first, but once she, settled into our group, I noticed that she had a great sense of humor and she was extremely smart. She knew all the hidden pathways around campus, and she was a great asset to our Human Resources Undead team and really just fit in with our friend group very well.
What sort of things did you do together?
Yeah, we just, did Human Resources Undead, and Ryan would commonly just hang out around our apartment, and we would just watch movies, play video games. We played video games a lot, just normal things.
Were there any agreements made with Miss Grimes to join the drug ring?
No.
Did it ever go further was Miss Grimes ever asked to join this drug ring?
She was asked to join the drug ring, but she denied, which I'm happy and glad because I don't want her going down a bad path.
Did it ever go further than this?
No, it's not.
Did you ever witness Ryan participate in the drug ring in any way?
I never witnessed Ryan tell anyone about the operation. I never witnessed Ryan recruit anyone, and unlike Andy, I'm here today to solely tell the truth. And the truth is, I never witnessed nor was aware of Ryan Grimes participating in the drug operation in any shape or form.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross examine.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Rodriguez, you and the defendant became very close friends, correct?
Yeah, from Human Resources Undead.
And according to your affidavit, you felt that the defendant was somewhat impressionable, is that right?
I was just looking out for her.
So, yes.
Yes.
And you also felt that if the defendant was introduced to the idea of selling Adderall, that they might go along with it, correct?
I didn't want her to go back down that path.
So is that a yes or no?
Can you repeat the question?
You also felt that if the defendant was introduced to the idea of selling Adderall, that they might go along with it.
Potentially, yes.
But Ms. Benson still asked the defendant to join the operation.
Correct.
Is it true that the defendant had knowledge that the drug ring existed?
She was asked to join, so yes.
And is it true that the defendant was over at your apartment a lot?
Yes, we were all very good friends.
And you did base the drug ring out of your apartment with Andy Benson and Shannon Murray, correct?
Yes, based in our apartment, you said?
Yes.
Yes, it was, yes, correct.
Let's move on from the defendant. You gave your prescribed pills to Miss Benson, correct?
Yes, because she wouldn't drop the subject.
And is it true that you ordered Adderall off of the dark web for Andy Benson and Shannon Murray?
Regretfully, I did.
And you said that a lot of the time customers would find you, correct?
Not me specifically.
Not you specifically?
Maybe a few times.
Okay. But you still claim that your involvement was less than Miss Benson.
Yes, correct.
In fact, you said that you despise Andy Benson. Is that true?
No, we do.
According to affidavit, Miss Murray said that they had a plan for distributing cocaine around their campus at Catoctin College. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Miss Murray mentioned that they were planning to ask the defendant to help out with that. Is that true?
Can you repeat the question?
Miss Murray mentioned that they were planning to ask the defendant to help out with that.
I don't recall.
You don't remember Miss Murray saying that?
No.
Let's move on from Miss Murray. $2,200 was found in your room after the raid, correct?
Correct.
And you are worried about running out of money whilst in prison, is that right?
Yes.
And as a result, you had made a savings account?
Yeah, I had a savings account.
Is it true that the defendant transferred $1,675 into this account?
Yes, she was being a good friend. I was worried I was going to run out of money in prison.
And is it true that Shannon Murray accused you of getting a cut of the defendant's sales in exchange for covering for the defendant if the drug ring was ever busted?
Yes, she accused me of doing that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You redirect.
No, Your Honor.
All right. May witnesses excused. That's the next witness.
So we'd like to call Ms. Taylor Case to the stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? I do. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Taylor Casey, and I'm a retired detective with the Chesapeake County Police Department.
Hello, Ms. Casey. Could you expand a little on the work you were conducting prior to retiring?
Of course, I was head of the Special Investigations Division in the Narcotics Unit, and actually approved of Detective Jordan Carmichael's transfer in 2016 to our unit. From then, I became his direct superior. I also taught at the CCPS Police Academy on entry-level training subjects, such as the dangers of fentanyl ingestion and the identification of controlled dangerous substances.
And how did you find yourself in the field of law enforcement?
Well, I graduated from Anne Arundel Community College in 2004 with an Associate's of Applied Sciences degree in law enforcement. Later in 2005, I enrolled at the CCPD as a police officer, but then was promoted to become a detective in 2010. In 2012, I was then moved to the Special Investigations Division in the Narcotics Unit as a narcotics detective, and lastly, in 2015, I became head of that unit.
And could you elaborate on the extent of your knowledge on controlled substances?
Of course, on top of all the field work that I was doing, I also took an additional 150 hours of entry-level training in various subject fields, such as drug detection and drug enforcement.
And what, if any, training did you receive aside from drug detection and drug enforcement?
I took a 6-week departmental course in behavioral health. This training covered topics such as human behavior, conflict de-escalation and avoidance, and how humans are affected by the factors around them. At the end of this, I received a departmentally issued certificate in behavioral health management.
Behavioral health? How effective has that been in your career?
It's been very, very helpful. I have consistently applied these methods throughout the course of my career, and even on, I really reliably use this whenever I'm interacting with any sort of clients that I may have.
Now I'd like to talk about your experience in police investigations. You say you're retired. Are you currently employed?
I am. I successfully started my own private consulting business, Casey Industries, in July of 2020.
And what does Casey Industries do specifically?
Casey Industries specializes in reviewing law enforcement cases. We're here to audit the police as a check and balance. Think of Casey Industries like a peer revision. Our job is to revise and to find errors that any law enforcement case may have, not to fully reinvestigate or re-perform the case.
And what methods do you use to review police investigations?
First, I use all applicable evidence and data provided by law enforcement in a case. Then, compared to my own experiences in the field of criminal investigation and behavioral health, I'll conduct an audit on these. And based on that audit on the police procedures and police conduct, I will then reach a conclusion.
And is this method consistent with other experts in your field?
It is, and not only is consistent with experts in various other fields, I've also published several articles under academic journals and publications, so naturally they are peer-reviewed. I am also frequently invited to speak at conferences hosted by defense bars, where I'm asked to talk about my methods in examining police conduct and finding flaws in law enforcement cases.
And did you reliably apply this method to the facts of today's case?
Yes, I use my standard investigative methods to come to a conclusion in this case.
And did you have the sufficient facts and data to come to a conclusion?
I did have sufficient facts. While I was unable to interview Ryan Grimes herself, based on all the evidence that I reviewed, I am sure that I have a clear foundation on her personality. On top of that, I reviewed State's Exhibits 1 through 13, the affidavits of Carter Rodriguez and Andy Benson, the detective report from Detective Jordan Carmichael, and the expert report from Dr. Simon Green.
Thank you. At this point in time, I ask the court to recognize Ms. Taylor Casey as an expert in the field of police conduct, behavioral sciences, and police narcotics investigations.
Any objection from the state? Would you like to voir dire the witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the state objection, we would like to voir dire the witness.
All right, you may conduct some voir dire.
I'm now approaching the podium if I may. So, Ms. Casey, do you have a degree in psychology from an accredited college?
I have consistently used my certificate and training in various field work and with clients, so my knowledge is very, very long.
Do you have a degree in psychology? Yes or no?
I do not.
And do you have any professional medical journals regarding the field of psychology published, or regarding that of behavioral health?
I have published several articles under scholarly journals as well.
So, you haven't had a degree, career in behavioral health or psychology, is that correct?
My courses to get an Associates of Applied Sciences degree in law enforcement have required me to take certain courses, obviously that I don't list if the long is quite tedious.
So, your only training, to be clear, is a 6-week program on behavioral health, is that correct?
Yes, but I've also applied all of this in various situations, so my knowledge is very broad.
No further questions, Your Honor. At this time, the state objects to Taylor Casey being an expert in the field of behavioral health, but not as an expert in police training or identification of dangerous and controlled substances.
Wish to respond?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Taylor Casey has not only received 6 weeks of training in her department, but she has also reliably applied and consistently applied all of the knowledge that she has received from that training to every single one of her courses and every single one of her cases and any interactions that she has had with the individuals where she would use this sort of knowledge.
May I respond?
You may.
Ms. Casey may have some experience regarding behavioral health, but she doesn't have any professional education from an accredited college. So for that, I say that she does not have the experience.
To that, I say a middle schooler could probably be an expert in computer technology more so than somebody my age, even without a college degree. So I think that goes to the weight that we'll give to the expert's testimony. I'll overrule the objection and admit the witness as an expert in the fields designated by the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Casey, how often do potential errors or improper conduct occur in police investigations?
While our main goal is not to disagree with the police, I'd say about 70% of the cases we review have some sort of police misconduct or error.
And did you have a conclusion on potential errors or improper conduct about this case to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
I do. I have reached 3 conclusions on this case, all to a certain level of professional certainty.
Could you elaborate on those 3 conclusions?
Of course. First, at the time of Grimes' arrest, the police did not have probable cause to arrest her. Second, the evidence of Ron Grimes' fingerprints on household objects is insufficient evidence to prove that she was a part of the narcotics trafficking ring. And third, Ron Grimes is just a college student who is trying to adapt to her new college experience as a freshman.
Your first conclusion is that the police did not have probable cause when originally arresting Ms. Ryan Grimes. Could you elaborate?
Yes. Probable cause is, in simple terms, the belief that a particular crime has been committed and that particular person has committed that crime.
Objection relevance. Anybody I'd like to explain?
For
The determination of probable cause is irrelevant because the defendant has already been arrested and charged.
okay. You like to respond?
Yes. While the defendant has been arrested and charged, the basis of probable cause and the revision of the case in and of itself is based on, it has been reviewed by my expert witness, and therefore it would be relevant because she is speaking about the presence of probable cause in this case.
Well, I mean, the witness's opinion on probable cause is different from the judicial determination of probable cause that was made earlier in the case, which ultimately led to the charges. In this case, it serves as the basis for the witness's opinion, so I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you. Would you like to continue with the pieces of evidence that the police did have when originally arresting Ms. Ryan Grimes?
Of course. At the time of Grimes' arrest, the police only had 3 simple pieces of information. First, Ryan Grimes was seen coming and going from her senior's apartments at odd hours. However, odd hours, meeting up with your friends does not mean that it should hint at the faintest sort of criminal behavior. It's natural to want to be around your friends. Second, the evidence of Ryan Grimes' fingerprints on household objects is insufficient evidence to prove that she was a part of the narcotics trafficking ring. Again, it is an undisputed fact that Ryan Grimes was a close friend of the seniors and a very frequent visitor at the apartment where she would play games. And third, Detective Jordan Carmichael is incredibly reliant on Andy Benson's word, who has an enormous incentive to lie. The state has offered him an enormous incentive, the incentive of a clean record. The more information Andy Benson gives, the better things work out for him.
Your second conclusion is that there is insufficient evidence to prove that Ryan Grimes was involved in narcotics trafficking. Could you elaborate?
Of course. Ryan Grimes wasn't even on Detective Jordan Carmichael's radar until after Andy Benson's testimony, who, as I have stated before, has an enormous incentive to lie. It is an undisputed fact that the state has given Andy Benson this incredible incentive that he wants of a clean slate. This can be shown through both the detective report and Andy Benson's testimony. Andy Benson's testimony changed the course of this case dramatically, even though no other witness has even given the testimony that Ryan Grimes was a part of this narcotics trafficking ring.
And does the state have any other statements aside from Andy Benson's?
They don't. In fact, Detective Jordan Carmichael didn't even try to interview any students. No student has ever acknowledged that they discussed or bought any drugs from Ryan Grimes herself.
And your final conclusion is that Ms. Ryan Grimes is just a college student that's adjusting to college life. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Of course. Based on her interview with Detective Jordan Carmichael, we can tell that Ryan Grimes is a well-adjusted, confident, and very well-spoken individual. Any individual who has the ability to integrate themselves in a well-established group of friends is most likely to not always go with whatever they will say, because she is very confident and she's unafraid to stand up for herself.
And what is your final conclusion regarding the facts of today's case?
Unfortunately, this case falls under one of the 70% of cases that I have reviewed. This case does have some sort of police misconduct and error. I will state my 3 conclusions once more. First, at the time of Grimes' arrest, the police did not have probable cause to arrest her. Second, the evidence of Ryan Grimes' fingerprints on household objects is insufficient evidence to prove that she was a part of the narcotics trafficking ring. And third, Ryan is just a college student who is adapting to her college experience and reaching out to new friends.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, good evening, Ms. Casey.
Good evening.
So, you created your own standard investigative methods, is that correct?
My standard investigative methods are aligned with many other expert ideas as well.
And so, you have several names for these investigations too, is that correct?
The reason why there are several different names is because different experts obviously use different names for their fields, but the core tenets of this is very, very similar.
So, the methods you used are not explicitly defined, correct?
Could you elaborate?
The methods you use, they're objective. There's no protocols with your methods that are provided by our body of government.
My protocols are very reliant and they are approved of many other experts in my field as well as many other fields.
But is it true that they're not defined?
They have core tenets that are defined. Their name just happens to be very flexible across different subject areas.
And so, these methods, they're not published anywhere either, am I right?
I've published several articles under academic journals and publications which outline my tactics in reviewing police conduct.
So, you also use the term probable cause to determine if police use correct procedures, is that right?
Correct.
But probable cause is also not defined. It's objective, is that correct?
While probable cause may not be correct, objectively defined in the Constitution, there is
Objection unresponsive and narrative.
No, nevertheless, the witness is trying to answer your question. You may continue.
Thank you. The Constitution may not have a definitive definition of probable cause, but everyone in the expert field will agree that the core tenets are, as what I have said, probable cause is the belief that a crime has been committed and that particular person has committed that crime.
But would it be accurate to say that everyone's definition of probable cause, including that of Detective Carmichael's, would be in some way different?
The core tenets are still the same.
So, you claim that Mr. Grimes was charged with narcotics trafficking in your second conclusion, correct?
Yes, she was.
But isn't it true that he's actually charged for conspiring to distribute controlled dangerous substances, which would be narcotics?
Could you elaborate?
The thing you had missed in your conclusion is that the defendant conspired to distribute narcotics. You just said that he was involved in distributing narcotics, which implies that he directly distributed and trafficked these drugs himself.
Many witnesses have testified that Ryan Grimes was not involved in any way in the narcotics trafficking ring.
So, can you define conspiracy for me?
I'm afraid I don't have a solid definition for that.
Thank you. So, you also found some concerning evidence in your report, is that correct?
Correct.
Evidence that may in some ways hurt your case?
Could you repeat that?
Evidence that may in some ways hurt the defense's case?
Which evidence would you be talking about?
Well, that's what I was getting to. You listed some evidence that you thought was concerning about the defendant.
Yes, I did.
So, first off, this brings me to my first piece of evidence. So you found Grimes' presence with the three individuals suspicious on his own.
Being with them does not mean that she has to be conspiring with them in the drug ring.
But you found Grimes' presence alone to be suspicious.
It could be suspicious.
Okay, so and did you find it unlikely that Mr. Grimes' fingerprints would end up on the safe by coincidence?
Mrs. Grimes lived in the She was a frequent visitor in the senior's apartment, and we have already testified that the safe is in a common household object next to the microwave and dishes.
So, and you found the possible connection between Zombie, the name that came up in the notebook, and the defendant as shown in text messages to be strong evidence against the defendant?
It is a nickname they have for her.
But would this be strong evidence against the defense?
It's suspicious.
Okay, so yet this still doesn't amount to your definition of probable cause, this evidence I've listed.
It does not.
So you were concerned with how Detective Carmichael handled his interviewing, correct?
Interviewing,
Of younger students around the campus.
Detective Jordan Carmichael did not interview students around campus.
Are you sure about that?
What time frame are we talking about when we are talking about interviewing students?
Carmichael interviewed students immediately after finding out about Mr. Grimes. He conducted an investigation.
Detective Jordan Carmichael did not interview students after the arrest of Ms. Ryan Grimes.
Do you recall writing a report?
Affidavit, yes.
Reports and notes. Do you recall signing this report?
I do.
This is your signature, correct?
Correct.
And you swore under the pains and penalties of perjury that you would tell nothing but the truth.
Correct.
So-
Is that the revised version of the casebook?
Yes, it is. So, read silently as I read aloud. My first major concern with Detective Carmichael's investigation is how Detective Carmichael handled interviewing students on campus. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. You said you should have hired a younger looking cop, correct? For these investigations?
An officer that would blend in with the college experience instead of standing out, as Detective Jordan Carmichael did, yes.
Because then students would speak more freely, they feel more comfortable, correct?
They would feel more comfortable, yes, because they would know that they were talking. As I've said in my affidavit, younger looking officers who could pose as college professors or senior students would be more likely to have access to these informations without directly prosecuting the students who they are interviewing.
But you can't say for certainty that this would have an effect on the investigation, correct?
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, it's your opinion that the appearance of the cop would have an effect on the investigation. Is there any evidence backing that?
Detective Jordan Carmichael himself said he acknowledges that students were pretty likely to recognize him as a police officer, and he was unable to have any responses. No responses were gathered from any of these interviews. No student had acknowledged that they had discussed selling drugs or they had bought any drugs from Ryan Grimes.
So I'm now going to direct your attention onto your work itself. You don't have any other people at your firm, correct? Any other people doing investigating or auditing like you are?
I have administrative assistant and I have 2 as-needed private contracts.
So you have no one that's specifically checking your work, correct? You don't consult with any peers on your audits?
My audits are reliant on other expert ideas, and we are here as overvision.
So you never met with the defendant in person, correct?
I was able to review all applicable evidence and data that would give me the important details necessary to understand this case and
So-
Ryan Grimes' personality.
So is that a yes or a no?
Could you repeat the question again, Ben?
Did you meet with the defendant in person?
No, I did not.
In fact, his lawyers denied you an interview, correct?
Lawyers did deny me.
So, isn't it true that you were also Carmichael's direct superior?
I was.
Is it true that you approved Detective Carmichael's transfer into the narcotics division?
I did.
And yet you believe Detective Carmichael improperly conducts his investigations?
Detective Jordan Carmichael has 8 years of experience. I have 17 years of experience in this field. Detective Jordan Carmichael has a lot yet to learn, and while I was his direct superior, there are many other factors, people, variables that could weigh into his training and experience and handling of any of his work that he does.
No further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect of this witness?
No redirect, Your
All
Honor.
right, the witness is excused. All right, next witness.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Ryan Grimes, and I'm 19 years old.
19, do you attend school?
Yes, I attend Catoctin College.
And why did you decide to attend that school?
I decided to attend Catoctin because it was close to my parents and my 2 younger siblings. I wanted to remain near home.
And can you describe your life there?
It was pretty lonely in the beginning. I stayed in a single room and I connected with some people on my floor, but no one I really grew a close connection with.
And can you please tell the members of the jury what made it so hard to make friends?
I was a little bit shy and I'm only a freshman, so I really wanted to focus on my studies. I never really had a chance to go out and connect with anyone, but it got better when I decided to join a club, Humans versus the Undead.
And what other clubs did you look at?
I looked at info sessions for Model UN and student government, but I didn't really like any of them. But when I went to the info session for Humans versus the Undead, I immediately loved it and I decided to join.
And what was it like when you initially joined?
When I initially joined, I was kind of like an alternate player, so I would be on one team one day and then I would be on another team the next. But I had a really good game as the Undead one round, and the next day after that match, I was offered a position on Andy Benson's team, and I accepted.
And who else was on Mr. Benson's team?
Shannon Ray and Carter Rodriguez.
And what was their team like?
Honestly, their team was really close and tight-knit. All three of them were seniors, and they lived in an apartment on campus together, so it was kind of intimidating for me at first to go in and join a friend group where everyone was already so close, but I felt like I could have finally found my spot on campus with these three people.
And how did Humans versus the Undead improve your relationship with these students?
We played Humans versus the Undead at least once a week, and after Humans versus the Undead, I would go back to the apartment and we would hang out. We hung out a lot.
And what sort of things did you do at their apartment?
We would watch TV, watch movies, play video games, do homework. We would order food, we would split the bill, and we would watch TikToks.
That sounds like a great time, Ms. Grimes.
It was.
Was there ever a time the group made you feel uncomfortable?
There was this one time that the group made me feel uncomfortable. It was after a match, and Carter had a test that he had to study for, so Shannon offered him some Adderall, and I was like, that's kind of weird, where did you get that Adderall? And the group just laughed it off and passed it off as whatever, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of uncomfortable, but Carter took the Adderall, and she went to go study for the test, and we just moved on from that. I was a little uncomfortable, but we moved on.
Was this the only time that the group ever talked about drugs with you?
No, it was brought up a few more times.
How often did they talk about drugs with you?
Not often. After I made my position clear that I was uncomfortable with it, I was only really aware of the things that I would see in plain sight.
What things did you see?
There was a safe in the kitchen and a little black notebook that would lie around here and there.
This is the State's Exhibit 2A that is being projected for the jury. Can you please describe this image for the court?
Yeah, so it's in their kitchen, in their apartment. There is a microwave on the top shelf with an air fryer and some things next to it. On the middle shelf, it's the safe. And on the bottom, it is plates and common kitchen utensils.
Your fingerprints were found on the safe. Did you ever open or use it?
No, I didn't even know the combination to it, but like Carter mentioned, I might have had to bend down and try and get a plate, so I might have had to put my hand on the safe in order to reach those items that I needed.
So then, Ms. Grimes, did you have any other information in regards to their operation?
No, I did not have any other information, only the things that I would hear very rarely, or that I would see.
And why did you choose to not involve yourself?
I chose to not involve myself because I was only a freshman. I wanted to get through my college years, and I did not want to do something that I knew I would regret.
And how did they respond to your decision to not engage in their criminal activities?
Shannon was fine with it. To my perception, she seemed kind of uncomfortable herself. Andy and Carter, not so much. They asked me to introduce them to my friends. They said I wouldn't even have to touch the drugs because they knew I was uncomfortable with it. But I refused that offer as well. I did not want any part of their drug activity.
After you found out about all of this, how did the rest of the semester go with your group?
After this, it went as normal as what one could say. We continued to hang out, we continued to play Humans vs. the Undead together, and that was pretty much it.
And were you aware of any other substances being dealt?
Okay, yeah. So Carter came up to me before Thanksgiving break, and she was like, she told me about the potential of dealing cocaine, and I refused this offer immediately. I'm not gonna help you guys deal Adderall, so I'm not gonna help you guys deal cocaine.
And were there any formal agreements that you made to involve yourself in this drug ring?
No, there were no formal agreements made.
Were there any informal agreements that were made to involve yourself?
No.
Have you spoken to any of the suspects since their arrests?
I've not spoken to them, no.
And after their arrests, do you recall being interviewed by Detective Carmichael?
Yes, I do.
Did you have to go to this interview?
No, I did not.
So why did you?
I went because I have a bright future and I have a clean record that I want to keep because it's what I deserve. And I went to speak that I had nothing to hide and I was willing to talk about what happened.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecutor.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Grant, I'm going to start by asking you about your knowledge of the drug operation. So it was Ms. Rodriguez who told you about her and her friends selling study drugs, correct?
Yes.
And it was Ms. Rodriguez who told you that she, Ms. Benson, and Ms. Murray began to sell study drugs around spring of 2021?
Yes.
And you were aware that Ms. Benson was involved in the drug operation, correct?
Yes, I was aware that Ms. Benson was involved.
And you were also aware that Ms. Murray was involved in the drug operation, correct?
Yes, all three of them were.
And you are aware that Ms. Benson and Ms. Murray got fake prescriptions for the drug operation, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that the drugs were easy to sell, correct?
That the drugs were easy to sell. What do you mean by that? Like,
That you knew based on Ms. Rodriguez's explanation, you were aware that the drugs were easy to sell, correct?
based on I was aware, yes.
And it was easy to sell for a major markup, is that correct?
Maybe. Sure.
Would you like me to show your affidavit to refresh your memory?
Sure.
Court's indulgence. Okay, I'm going to read to you lines 172 and 173, or excuse me, I meant line 171 and 172. So you said that they would sell the drugs on campus for a solid profit and pool the money as a group. According to Carter, tons of people on campus needed Adderall, and it was really easy to sell for a major markup. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. You are also aware that there was a safe in the common area, correct?
Yes, there was a safe in the kitchen.
And you are aware that the safe contained drugs, correct?
I knew that they used it for their operation.
So the answer to my question is yes.
No.
So you are not aware that the safe had drugs?
I was aware that they used it for their operation.
Which was the drug operation, is that true?
Doesn't mean they held the drugs in it, based on what I knew.
Okay, so you never even limited the time you spent with your friends, correct?
I finally found my close friends, so why would I want to be away from them if they were the only people I was really close to on campus? I wasn't
So
gonna be
you
alone
continued to
here.
go to an apartment, which was the home base of a drug operation, correct?
It's where they lived.
But you continued to go to an apartment, which was the home base of a drug operation.
They all hung out there. It's where they all lived. All three.
So the answer to my question is a yes.
Yes.
No.
It's their home.
Any redirect?
Your Honor.
Aye, witnesses excused. All right, court will now hear closing arguments, first beginning with the defense.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. May it please the court. A clean record. Today, we have come to assert the innocence of a young college freshman by the name of Ryan Grimes, who deserves a clean record. Ryan Grimes is a freshman just like any other. With big aspirations and dreams, her love for the game Humans vs. the Undead has carried her through college and allowed her to make new friends with Andy Benson, Carter Rodriguez, and Shannon Murray. However, these so-called friends of hers would try playing a different game involving the illegal distribution of drugs. But Miss Grimes would not falter in the face of this construed adversity because she is not a zombie, she is not the undead. She is her own person, not involved in it all. As the evidence in this trial has shown, Miss Grimes did not conspire with Mr. Benson, Miss Rodriguez, Miss Benson, and Miss Murray to distribute the controlled substances of amphetamines and cocaine. Through her clean conscience and clean actions, Miss Grimes has proven that she deserves a clean record. Under Maryland law, conspiracy is defined as a form of agreement or mutual understanding to commit an illegal act. In order for a defendant to be guilty of conspiracy, they must 1, agree with at least one other person to distribute the controlled substances of amphetamines and cocaine, and 2, enter into that agreement with the intent to commit those crimes. Under this rule, Ms. Grimes' association with the group is not itself sufficient enough to prove her participation or membership in the ring. Whilst it might be expected that Ms. Grimes was a co-conspirator due to her close relationship, the reality was quite different. Because an active presence in the suspects' lives does not equal an active presence in the drug ring. We heard Ms. Grimes testify to the fact that while she was close friends with Ms. Benson, Ms. Rodriguez, and Ms. Murray, their friendship never went past what normal college friends would do, such as spending time together in their home and playing video games. In terms of the drug ring, she was only aware of what they would tell her and what she would see in plain sight. The safe that's right directly under the microwave. Ms. Grimes even testified that the only reason a justification for her fingerprints on the safe was the fact that she would have to bend over to reach the plates that are directly below it. In terms of the drug, despite being asked to help increase sales, Ms. Grimes directly declined the offer because she wasn't willing to involve herself in a situation she knew would jeopardize her future and clean actions. Ms. Carter Rodriguez testified to the fact that Ms. Grimes was not involved at all, did not participate or accept any agreements at all to involve herself in the drug ring. All that she would do was spend time in their home and play games with them. Once again, Ms. Rodriguez testified that it's quite easy to have to lean on the safe in order to grab the plates that are right directly under that. Unlike Ms. Benson, Ms. Rodriguez also has nothing to gain by testifying today. Ms. Taylor Casey, former head of the narcotics unit at the CCPD and also the direct superior to Detective Carmichael, has a background in reviewing police investigations to look for potential errors or improper misconduct. And this has allowed her to come to the conclusion that there was not sufficient evidence to prove Ms. Grimes' participation or membership in the ring, nor was there probable cause to warrant Ms. Grimes' arrest. In comparison, Detective Carmichael didn't even consider Ms. Grimes a suspect until Andy Benson's cooperation, which was heavily relied on throughout this case. If the state believes that Andy Benson cooperates adequately, she could ultimately escape with a clean record. Andy Benson even testified that she will tell her truth, the truth determined by the state, in order to make sure that she receives her probation before judgment deal. One of Detective Carmichael's justifications for Ms. Grimes' arrest was the fact that the term zombie was found in Shannon Murray's notebook. However, Shannon Murray, a suspect in this drug ring, is not even here to testify about the contents inside of this notebook. And none of the suspects in this case ever even saw her writing inside. So we can't even confirm if the contents inside of this notebook are actually correct. Andy Benson took this deal with no regard for the truth that Ryan Grimes remained uninvolved. Andy Benson wants a clean record. Ryan Grimes deserves one. Mason Huang, a student at Catoctin College, received a 50% discount in exchange for her membership in the drugs ring by directing her friends in order to sell these drugs. She even went as far as to ask Ryan Grimes to sell her Adderall, although she did decline. Ms. Grimes did not make the wrong choice of following as a zombie would and involving herself in something illegal. The only wrong choice she did make was attempting to be friends with those involving themselves in those activities. But that alone is not sufficient evidence to prove her as a co-conspirator in this case. The evidence clearly shows that Ms. Grimes was not involved or accepted any agreements in order to be a part of this drug ring. She is the victim of Andy Benson's lies. Choose the verdict that illuminates the truth. Thank you.
Counsel, thank you. Steve?
May it please the court. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when an impressionable college freshman begins to befriend seniors, they are bound to follow in their footsteps. There is no doubt that Andy Benson, Shannon Murray, and Carter Rodriguez were involved in a conspiracy to sell Adderall around Catoctin College between March of 2021 and December of 2021. However, the question of the defendant's involvement in the conspiracy arises because of the defendant's own actions and clear evidence. Members of the jury, the defendant did not merely associate with co-conspirators through Humans versus the Undead. And instead, the evidence has shown that the defendant frequently engaged with the co-conspirators and had knowledge about the details of the drug operation. Consequently, the testimonies provided by the state align with all the evidence we have provided throughout this trial. Today, the state has provided the court with the testimonies of 3 witnesses: Andy Benson, Mason Huang, and Detective Jordan Carmichael. These witnesses have shown that the defendant knowingly and willingly distributed narcotics. Ms. Benson, former close friend of the defendant, testified today that after learning about their drug operation from Ms. Rodriguez and Ms. Grimes voluntarily approached Ms. Benson. As shown in Exhibit 7, the defendant wanted to have an in-person conversation. During this conversation, the defendant voluntarily asked Ms. Benson to join their drug operation. In response, Ms. Benson directly asked the defendant whether she wanted to be a part of the operation, to which the defendant verbally answered, "Yes, I'm in. I'll start talking to people tomorrow." Ladies and gentlemen, this shows that the defendant directly agreed to commit the crime of distributing narcotics. The state also provided the testimony of Mason Huang, another student at Catoctin College who interacted with the co-conspirators and was aware of the drug operation. He has attested to not only witnessing the defendant's frequent interactions with the co-conspirators, but also the defendant entering and leaving the apartment between 12 and 4 a.m. on multiple occasions. You have also learned from Ms. Huang that Ms. Rodriguez herself mentioned to her that there was a fourth person involved in the drug operation. And finally, the state had called upon Detective Jordan Carmichael, who was admitted as an expert in Chesapeake County Police Department and its narcotics unit. During her initial investigation, she noted that the defendant frequently engaged with other co-conspirators. This key evidence further solidified the testimonies of both Ms. Benson and Ms. Huang. Through her investigation, it was also found that Ms. Murray's book mentioned zombie, the same nickname the seniors used to refer to Ms. Grimes. The abundant evidence from each of these witnesses clearly meets the burden of proof required to prove that the defendant, Ms. Grimes, was a co-conspirator of the drug operation and therefore participated in the distribution of narcotics. Although the defendant claims to have never taken part in the drug operation, the defendant has admitted through their cross-examination about knowing crucial details pertaining to the drug operation. One of the main co-conspirators, Ms. Rodriguez, also testified on behalf of the defendant. Through her testimony, she stated that Ms. Benson directly asked the defendant to be a part of the drug operation. However, the defendant admitted to being asked by Ms. Rodriguez on 2 occasions to join the drug operation. Additionally, the defendant also admitted to Ms. Rodriguez that it was Ms. Rodriguez who explained the details of the drug operation. This has clearly proven that the testimony of Ms. Rodriguez not only contradicts that of Ms. Benson and Ms. Huang, but also the statements made by the defendant herself. Ms. Rodriguez also admitted in her affidavit to receiving a large sum of money from the defendant during October of 2022. This further supports the reasoning to provide a biased testimony on behalf of the defendant. The counter-arguments made by the defense have failed to address the numerous incriminating evidence pointing towards the defendant's involvement. In contrast to the defense's weak arguments, the state has proven that the defendant verbally agreed to take part in the conspiracy and frequently engaged with the co-conspirators and had a significant amount of knowledge on the drug operation. We have shown throughout this trial that all relevant evidence in the case provided by both the state and the defense point towards the defendant's involvement with the distribution of narcotics. And based on the information provided today, the state has met its burden of proof. Therefore, we ask that you return a verdict of guilty for all charges. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, counsel. The judges will now recess to begin their tabulation of their scoring and the deliberation. We will be back soon. All right, please be seated. Black's Law Dictionary defines the word wow as leaving an indelible impression on the audience. And we're the audience, and you all left quite an impression on us this evening. I am so proud of each and every one of you. You should be proud of yourselves. Your families should be proud of your performance, not only tonight, but the hard work that you put in to get where you are today. I have to tell you, it's just such a rewarding opportunity for us to be able to participate in these mock trials and to see all of you come along and learn lessons through this exercise that I think will probably stay with you for a long, long time. And you have done yourselves proud. You were civil with each other. You were professional. You thought quickly on your feet. You knew the material inside and out. And I just can't say enough good things about the job that each of you did today. And I I left your coaches out, but your coaches and your teachers should be extremely proud as well of how you all have acquitted yourselves this evening. So let me turn it over to Judge Titus.
All right. To echo what Judge Hecker said, first of all, happy Valentine's Day to everyone. I wore my Valentine's tie tonight, and the fact that you're here doing this on Valentine's Day is a testament to how serious you take it. I don't want to say a whole lot because I know Judge Hecker has the decision to make and Judge DeLeonardo has to say a few things as well, but I'm just going to say the same thing that I've said every week. I know it sounds like a broken record, but we, during our regular jobs, see folks, be they adults or even juveniles, where oftentimes when they're in front of us, they're here usually because they're dealing with something that's not one of their finer moments in life. It is so reassuring for me to come and see you guys come in here because this is fantastic. You guys, this is taking time away from, as an extracurricular, basically, you put a lot of time into it, and to see how it improves from week to week, and even to see how then the teams change from which role they're playing each week, to see how the cases unfold. It's different each week. And I'll just echo what Judge Hecker said, which is, wow, you guys did a great job tonight.
Yeah, it is really great seeing the progression over the course of this, as well as the course of years, and seeing how much the program has grown. I always said in this program, it does a couple things. One, in today's world, you learn how to make reasoned arguments and use analysis and logic and disagree civilly and make a point, which I think is a tremendous skill that sometimes we lose in today's electronic world. The other thing, it gives a great opportunity for your parents to see you dressed up and not wearing pajama bottoms and t-shirts, right? So it really is, and all kidding aside, I will say, I see attorneys that are barred at times that can learn a lot from you, and your poise and the way you handle yourself, it really is impressive. I also know how much work goes into this and how much work you're putting in beyond your normal duties. And so I want to acknowledge that. I know that's a lot. And for the teacher coaches and the attorney coaches, the amount of work you volunteer to do this is incredibly appreciated, I know, by the students involved, and the same with the families. I know this is an additional obligation, but having been a parent before with their children involved in mock trial, I know how proud that you are to see them in here, because you probably don't normally see them that way in the rest of their life. At least I never did, except when they were in here, and how impressed I was. So again, thank you all. Job well done.
Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
Yes.
All right, on the charge of conspiracy to distribute cocaine, how do you define the defendant? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the charge of conspiracy to distribute Adderall, how do you find the defendant? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
And so say you all? So say you all. Okay, would you like the jury poll? Yeah. That's actually pretty much the way we do it, except the clerk calls upon the jury foreperson, and we have a written verdict sheet in which the jury foreperson indicates on behalf of the entire jury what the verdict is, and that gets put in the court file, but that was pretty close. I put you on the spot. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you for your verdict.
Actually, I wanted you to.
Okay. So you were paying attention. That would have, sometimes we go back and talk to juries, and they always want to know, would you have done the same thing? And usually I don't give them an honest answer, but it's up to them really to decide, not up to me to decide. But I have to say I would have come to the same conclusion. I think the three of us would as well. It's a real tough set of facts for the prosecution this year, but I thought you did a yeoman's job, a young woman's job. All right, with that, the score of tonight's competition is prosecution 119, defense 133. So congratulations.